Cassie, taking on your point in relation to numbers of Parliament, if I might, that was a recommendation that should be looked at of the Ethics Commission. My strong view is it hasn't worked, the smaller Parliament, that's my strong view. When one looks at 25 in the lower house, you're just unable to properly do the work that's envisaged with 25 in the lower house. People say, look, Tasmania is smaller than Brisbane. Brisbane have got a city council. Why do you need that amount of people? We do it with less people on the city council. But if you're in the job of politics, if you're in the job of government, you need a certain critical mass to make it work. And I think over recent times we've shown that it hasn't worked. I think there is a need to be a change. And I think the government itself may well realise that it needs a change, because when one goes into the House of Assembly now, you can see there being enough seats for a Parliament far in excess of what it is now. So my strong belief is that the smaller Parliament hasn't worked, it hasn't saved any money. In fact, the money's increased, and I think the sooner we get back to a bigger Parliament, the better Parliament will be.
Thanks. I won't take any more hands now because we've got three. I'll just go to the gentleman in the front.
Thank you. I'm trying to phrase my comment as a question.
Keep it short, no speeches.
The question probably has to be, if we're talking about power sharing, why do we never talk about sharing power with the people, as in direct democracy? I guess it's the shortest way of trying to get this going. And whom am I addressing it to? Greg, done that one before.
Well, I'll tell you why it's a bad idea. And I know that in Switzerland it's worked well, and it's part of the political culture, long-standing political culture of Switzerland. But the United States has direct democracy, and it is a disaster. California is bankrupt because of direct democracy. California treats migrants with contempt because of direct democracy. In other American states, the death penalty has been reinforced, including lethal injections, because of direct democracy. In other states, you've seen Megan's Law, these outrageous laws which name and shame convicted sex offenders and make their life hell after they've served their time in prison. That's direct democracy, and that's why you wouldn't want to let them near it. Because I'll tell you what, you'll get the death penalty, you'll get Megan's Law, and you'll get all the other law and order junkie. You will, let me tell you, you'll get it. And if you want that, but worse than that, what you'll get is you'll get what you've got in California, where they say, Proposition 8, for example, no more taxes. So the government can't raise taxes. So the government's broke. The government is absolutely broke. It could not pay its public servants on June 30 this year. That's direct democracy.
Thanks very much. I've just got a backlog, so I won't take any more hands at the moment. Next one's here.
My name's Karen Meldrick. I'm just putting it to Richard or perhaps Margaret. Richard mentioned that the politicians are delegates of the party. I think Margaret mentioned that the politicians are pretty much delegates of their bureaucracy. I put it to you, will we ever have true power sharing with the community so long as our politicians are also delegates of big business through the system of corporate donations?
Who wants to take that one? Or is that just a comment? Margaret, did you want to take that one?
Can I just be sure, would you have to just be sure to interpret the question so we get it right?
Can we have true power sharing so long as we have a system of corporate donations for party donations?
I think this is something going to the issue of disclosure of donations is how I was reading it.
Look, I think I agree with you that there is far too much influence from the big end of town because of corporate donations, and I think that happens in all administrations, regardless of the political party. I don't see that we need, I mean, if you were working with your constituency, and I know this is idealistic, but I don't know why we have to spend so much money come election time. If in Queensland, for instance, I wouldn't see people from one election to the next, and then of course out would come all the expensive advertising and visits into regional Queensland. What if we had genuine relationship with the people, and we knew that we had fixed term elections? Governments would stand or fall on their merits. Why do we have to put so much money and cut down so many trees with all the paper that comes through our letterboxes? We shouldn't need it if elected representatives are working with their communities. Call it idealistic, but I think we really should get away from that having to spend in order to be re-elected.
Does anyone on the panel want to talk about disclosure of donations?
Well, all I can say is that I fully agree with it. If, as Jim's committee has been dealing with, if you're going to have any integrity, you need transparency, and one of the transparencies is to know who's buying whom. Not that that's, but I mean, there are favours that go with being a good sponsor, even if it's special access of friendship. But it's, we worry that it's more. So.
And that was a recommendation of the Integrity Committee as well, that donations should be made known so everybody can see who is putting in the donations and who for.
Sounds like that's good reading in the report. There was a question from this gentleman.
David Westmore's my name. Greg, I was particularly interested in your comments about the courts being a check or a balance, if you like, to executive power. One of the difficulties with other courts is, well, no, in America, of course, the courts are represented, or officials are elected, some, but they're not, on the whole, of course, not in our system, they're not at all elected representatives. So isn't that problematic? It's a two-edged sword there that, yes, there is a check, and I agree particularly in the Terra case that you were part of, that it was very important that the court could be balanced there, but how do we make that work in a way that is more inclusive, when you could just have one judge, or in the case of the US, for decide the course of an election, and they're not at all elected people?
Well, look, it's a good question, and it's a legitimate question, and I don't mean that in a patronising sense. I mean that in a sense that I think there's a misunderstanding about the role of the judiciary and the rule of law. The judiciary is an equal partner, along with the executive and the parliament. The Conservatives would have it, and I don't say you're a Conservative, but the Conservatives would have it that we can't have a Bill of Rights because it gives too much power to unelected judges. That's a nonsense. Judges are there as a check on the executive. That's their role. Now, in fact, judges, activist judges, should be encouraged because that's their role. I don't like judges who are black-letter lawyers. They're lazy, intellectually lazy. In Victoria, for example, the Victorian Court of Appeal, led by Chris Maxwell, has been superb at articulating the rights of some of the most vulnerable people in the Victorian community. If only we had a Court of Appeal like that in Tasmania. I often think, of course, that we should be part of Victoria and then we could get the benefits of the Victorian legal system. And there are tremendous benefits, let me tell you. But I think it's very important that the judiciary is perceived as an equal partner, and that they are unelected is a good thing. I've seen the elected judiciary operate in America. It's not pleasant, it's not a good idea. But the US Supreme Court, for example, I think plays a very positive and a very strong role and is a very effective check. Again, if you look at cases like Hampden and Rumsfeld and Roe and Wade, these cases, has been a very effective check on the executive, but also an articulator of public policy. The courts have a role in articulating public policy, and when governments don't do it, courts have to do it and step in and do it. And they do it in Canada, and they did it in the Mason Court and the Brennan courts in Australia. Most articulate courts. Mabo was a result of judicial activism, and aren't we all glad we've got Mabo? Only the loonies think we shouldn't have it. And that's the role of the courts. The courts have a fundamentally important role. It's not well understood in our community.